Alone by A. Bertram Chandler. This story was only ever published in the February 1957 issue of New World's science fiction magazine. Read by Darrell T. Smith II for my channel, Quasar Spectra. Alone. "You have no conception," he said, "of what it's like. You may think that you know loneliness. You may have stood by yourself on a mountaintop or on the beach of an uninhabited island and said, 'I am alone.' But all around you, out of sight but only, relatively speaking, a stone's throw away, have been the teeming billions of Earth. Your mind has been aware, subconsciously perhaps, but still aware, of the emanations of love and friendship, courage, hate, and fear. You have belonged. Even Corderay, the first man to land on the moon, was not cut off as I was. The moon is close, a scant 240,000 miles. It is well inside the range, not that it matters now that the colony has been established. Corderay was lucky. He was never too far away, and besides, his radio was working. And he had only to step out of his ship and look up at the sky to Earth, to home, a familiar globe, not a featureless point of green light in the evening or the morning sky. He knew that to return he would have to endure 5 days only in space. 5 days, not 9 months. Yes, gentlemen, I know that you had decided against using a two-man ship for the second attempt to reach Mars. I know that it is better for a man to be alone than for him to come in time, and all too short a time, to hate the comrade with whom he is cooped up in a tin coffin. I know that the risk of insanity is preferable to the risk of insanity and murder. I didn't know, but neither did you, of the psychic field, the aura surrounding Earth. I took the risk, but I didn't know how great a risk it was. I was about 3 weeks out when I first noticed the loneliness. Have you ever lost a loved one? Have you ever, in the dead of night, awakened from a real, too real, dream of the past? And stretched out a hand and found not the warm, familiar flesh, gone for all time, but nothing. Have you? Then you'll have some faint, you'll never know how faint, you're not young enough, not fit enough for the long haul, idea of what it's like. It was more than mental, it was emotional and even physical. The horror of the nothingness outside the control room ports made me vomit. No, I didn't report it. I should have done, I know. But I was Iron Man McGinnis, the tough guy. McGinnis, the first man on Mars, and I was, but it was a long, long road to travel before I got there. So I was tough. So I wasn't going to squeal before I was hurt, even though I was hurt. Badly, irreparably. After all, I had the radio. I had the dozen or so games of chess that I was playing with various people in the lunar base and the space stations. I had my long conversations, whenever I wanted them, with the colony and the satellites. But there was no warmth in it. It was like talking with ghosts, with less than ghosts, for ghosts do presumably affect the emotions of human beings, and I was outside the range of Earth's emotional aura. All that I was getting was sonic vibrations transformed into etheric vibrations and transformed back into sound. There was no feeling. It was like the effect, or the lack of effect, of a player piano on a music lover. Even so, I made do with the radio for another month. Even though I was in an emotional vacuum, it gave me intellectual companionship. I could even appreciate, although not fully, the outrageous stories of which old Willis, the second in command of Satellite 3, has such an unlimited stock. And there was, of course, the chess. No, it wasn't too bad. for a while. You can get used to anything, to almost anything, in time. And there was the knowledge, not the feeling, but the knowledge that all Earth was behind me and that I could demand, at any time that suited me, a conversation with any one of her population, great or small, king or commoner, president or pauper. That universal hookup was, you say, the least that you could do for me, but it helped. I was alone, more alone than any man has ever been, but I was an emperor riding the empty skies, and my subjects, although millions of miles away, were, within clearly defined limits, my slaves. It was a blow when the radio went. You assured me, gentlemen, that my orbit ran well clear of all known meteor swarms, and I have been told often enough how astronomical the odds are against a collision between a spaceship and even a small meteor. Nevertheless, there was a meteor swarm, a large one. The radar gave warning, and the automatic evasion units took over, giving me barely time enough to wrap myself around a stanchion to wait for the sudden accelerations and decelerations. Luckily, I was in the hydroponics room at the time. I had remembered the experiments of and theories of Dr. Chandler Bose early in the century, and I was trying to goad the plants into some sort of emotional response, and not in control. It might have been better, perhaps, if I had been in the control room. I felt the impact and heard the explosion as the meteor hit us. I heard the automatically controlled airtight doors slam shut. For long seconds, I clung to the stanchion. I didn't know whether or not we were clear of the swarm, whether or not the automatic evasion units were still working, and I didn't want to be hurled and broken against a bulkhead by a sudden blast from the drive. At last, I deemed it safe to investigate. I broke out the emergency suit from its locker, shrugged myself into it. I squeezed through the sphincter airlock into the cabin. There was no damage there. I squeezed through the airlock into control. The hole in the shell, remarkably smooth it was, its edges fused by the heat of the impact, I saw at first glance. It would not be, I was relieved to find, too large to patch. The controls seemed to be undamaged, and the radar. Emmy, the electromagnetic navigational integrator and calculator, rather strange that I should have given the thing a female name, was ticking away quite happily in her corner. At first, I was relieved to see that all the really important items of equipment had survived unscathed. I wasn't so pleased when I saw that it was the radio that had borne the full brunt of the impact. Even with the spares I carried, it was beyond repair. Oh, I could have got it working by stripping the radar and Emmy, but I doubted my ability to complete the voyage without their aid. It was after the destruction of the radio that I lost all count of time. I must have performed my routine navigational duties, although I can't remember doing so, because when at last Mars loomed huge and ruddy on the screens, the ship had been swung on the gyroscopes, had already been subjected to the necessary deceleration, but I don't remember doing it. All that I remember is the endless hours of reading the microfilm books, the vague wonderment I felt that such people as the characters in the novels and biographies actually existed. The human race was something I had heard about once, but I found it hard to believe that such irrational beings had ever existed, could ever exist. But I was human, I kept telling myself with a sort of desperate urgency, but I couldn't believe it. I couldn't feel it. But we were coming in for a landing. I did all the things that I was supposed to do, made sure that the machines were doing the things that they were supposed to do. I'll not bore you, gentlemen, with the details. You know all about astronautics, on paper at any rate. You know all about astronautics when it's a matter of only 4 days from the station to the moon. I came in for the landing. The atmosphere was a little thicker than predicted and a deal more turbulent, but the servo mechanisms kept the ship upright, corrected every yaw. I should have been excited, but I was dead. Dead. I was the first man on Mars, and I was less worked up about it all than a city office worker dropping down in his helicopter to his suburban back garden. The realization that the canals were, after all, just that raised a faint thrill, and then when I saw what was unmistakably a city, tall, shadow-casting buildings, a lattice-work of streets, I felt the stirrings of interest. A city meant people. They might be, to my eyes, unholy monstrosities, but surely they would know emotions. Even if my coming inspired only hate and fear, it would be better than nothing. It would be a cool, green oasis to a thirst-crazed traveler in the desert. I took over the controls then. I did not bother to weigh the pros and cons. All I wanted to do was to land as close to the city as possible, to meet the Martians as soon as possible, to plunge my parched being into a deep, warm bath of raw emotion. I selected my landing place, an apparently level plain on the bank of the wide canal, and dropped with more enthusiasm than caution. It must have been spectacular, that landing. We must have hit like a meteorite, but the ship was stout enough to take the shock, and so was I. After all, I was not called Iron Man McGinnis for nothing. I didn't bother with any of the routine tests, atmospheric pressure and content, temperature, and so forth. I zipped myself into a suit, hung weapons, my heavy pistol and an axe, on my belt and hurried into the airlock. I opened the outer door without bothering to pump the air in the compartment back into the ship. I scrambled down the ladder to the dry, ochreous rubble on which the ship had landed. The city was little more than a half a mile away. Its slender towers stood sharply against the dark blue sky, and there was movement around the towers, around their tapering spires. And the flying things, I soon saw, were coming towards me. Like huge dragonflies they were, but all out of proportion. The bodies were too slender, the wings too long and too wide. Through my helmet I could hear the faint, high singing of their flight. As they drew nearer, I could see that they were not living beings, but machines. The glitter of their bodies was unmistakably metallic. Yet there was something alive about the way they flew, something that argued intelligent, although not infallible, direction. They circled me, warily, 20 of them, flying in line ahead in a wide circle. The whine of their rapidly vibrating wings was as maddening as that of a mosquito. I shouted at them, but they seemed not to hear. I jumped and waved. I was mad then. I was mad with disappointment and hunger. I was expecting that now I had come to an inhabited world, I should feel once again the subtle emanations given out by all life. But I was as lonely, as alone as at any time during that long, long voyage. I had to make them notice me. I had to make them feel something towards me. Anything, so long as it was strong enough, fierce enough. I had to feel their hate, their fear. The pistol was in my hand. I took careful aim, making allowance for deflection. I fired. One of the flying things staggered in its flight. A pair of flimsy, shimmering wings drifted slowly to the ground. The Martian hit the ground first. I ran to it, dropping the pistol and pulling the axe from my belt. I brought the blade crashing down on the long, slim body, laughing savagely as delicate springs and slender rods spilled out onto the coarse sand. I smashed in the head of the thing, laughing again as I exposed a gray, pulpy mass that squirmed and shrank from the blade, that oozed a thin ichor onto the arid soil. But still, I felt nothing. Still, I was alone. Did these beings know no hate, no fear? They were organic, in part at least. Death should mean as much to them as it meant to me, as it should mean to me, as it didn't. Slowly I walked back to where my pistol, gleaming and deadly, lay on the sand. Slowly I stooped and picked it up. The feel of it, the weight of it, were comforting. I was a dead man in all but physical fact. Soon, by the mere pressure of a finger, I should be a dead man. I was mildly amazed that I hadn't thought of it before. But the infernal mosquito whine of the Martian's wings was stepping up its frequency, was painfully high and thin. I tried to raise my arm, tried to bring the automatic up to my head, but nerves and muscles were somehow out of my control. I tried to raise my eyes to look at the Martians to see what they were doing. I tried, but my head was immovable. Then suddenly I was tired, very tired. I crumpled to the sand. I slept. They were good to me, the Martians. I had killed one of their number, but they bore no malice. They carried me into their city and placed me in a pressurized room. And when I awoke, greatly refreshed, I found that they had provided every comfort that it was possible for them to do. One of them came into the room to talk to me. I did not find him at all repellent. He was elegant, graceful, so much so that I was keenly aware of my own gross body. He talked to me, I say, and told me that his people had been observing the earth and at close range for generations. They had learned our various languages long since. Before I could express my incredulity, he produced from a pouch belted to his body a bundle of newspapers, some of them 50 years old. He showed me, in these same papers, reports of mysterious objects seen in the sky, reports of the sighting of things called flying saucers. He produced a packet of cigarettes. The tobacco was dry and powdery, but it was smokable. He lit my cigarette with the tip of a metallic tentacle that glowed suddenly red. He asked then why I had killed. I told him. I told him of the loneliness, of the madness that had come with it. I told him that I was still lonely, that I was still alone. And as I talked, I could feel the emptiness, the cold and the darkness sweeping back, and with them came the urge to hurt, to crush and maim, to make this being hate me before he died. He must have made some sort of signal to those outside the room. From somewhere came the high, unbearable whine. The rigid paralysis gripped me again. My eyes were fixed on the vibrating metal diaphragm, on what would have been the thorax of the Martian, if he had been an insect. "We have never been an emotional people," said the metallic voice. "Even before we became the hybrids that we are now, half organic matter, half machine, we were never emotional. But we know what a great part emotion plays in your lives. We have read your books, listened to your music. We have observed you. We have even devised instruments to measure emotional force. And I can assure you that you, on your world, live in an intense field of such force that is almost as essential to you as the air you breathe." He asked abruptly, "Do you want to live?" "No," I said. "Then do you wish to atone for the murder that you committed?" "Yes," I said. "Kill me. Get it over with." "But you must atone by living. You must be our messenger to Earth. You must tell your people what happens when they lift out and away from the emotional vibrations of their mother world. And you must tell them, too, that should any ships by some miracle reach our world with their crews still living, still more or less sane, then they will be dealt with ruthlessly. We have weapons that would make your fission bombs look like a child's toys. We have ships that could devastate your cities, your space stations, and your lunar colony as soon as any ship of yours landed on Mars. Tell your people that. But how am I to get back? I asked. I'll never survive the journey. You will, he told me. I did, and so I'm sitting here 10 miles to the north of Copernicus, watching you gentlemen in your pressurized tractors edging closer to me. I warn you, stop. I have weapons. Weapons I did not have when I left Earth, or come to that, when I left Mars. I'm sorry that I've burned your motors out. Sorry. Sorry? What is sorry? A figure of speech. I can watch your tractors, and at the same time I can watch Earth, the green and gold globe hanging in the black sky. But it means nothing to me, nothing at all. No, gentlemen, I did not go mad on the voyage back from Mars. My story is not, as you suggest, mere raving. Pick up your binoculars. Look at me, where the venturi should be. You don't see any venturi, do you? Neither did you see any exhaust flame when I dropped down to the moon from space. You will not suggest, surely, that alone on Mars, with no material, no tools, no equipment, I remodeled my ship and built a closed-cycle reactor? You would like the secret of that, wouldn't you? You would like to know how to maintain the hard vacuum abaft the firing chamber. But the secret is not mine to give away. I promised that I would warn you, but I did not promise that I would let you operate on me, that I would let you restore my brain to the perfectly good body that is sleeping in the deep-freeze chamber that the Martians installed for me. My brain was built into EMI. E-M-N-I-A-C, EMNIAC, the electromagnetic integrator and calculator, and I'm part of Emmy now, and she's part of me. You know, she had quite a definite personality. It still lives, after an odd fashion. I'm a hybrid now, as the Martians are. I'm one of you no longer. Neither am I one of them. I'm immortal, they told me, or near immortal. There's plenty of life in my pile, and I should be able to replenish the fissionable material before it dies, although by that time I should have figured out a way of drawing my energy direct from the radiation that floods all space. I'm immortal, and my body, thanks to its closed-cycle reactor, has practically unlimited range. I'll visit the Centaurian systems first, I think, just to try out my new wings. Then I'll make for the coal sack. But before I go, there's one thing I want from you. You'll not refuse me, I know. You'd better not, and you'd better cancel that order to Earth asking for a couple of rocket loads of military. I can listen on more than one wavelength, you know. There's one thing I want. That big electromagnetic computer, the one you call Mickey, in Base HQ. I'm still just a little lonely, and I'd like an occasional game of chess. You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.